Hi there, June Williams here, and we are going to be talking about issues around taking responsibility. And in this video, we'll be considering a couple of different ways that taking responsibility can go in a relationship. We're going to be considering these two patterns, one of overfunctioning and one of underfunctioning, and how those patterns end up impacting all of your relationships. We'll have a look here at the lesson overview and considering these different patterns of responsibility, looking at what it is to be in the overfunctioning role and in the underfunctioning role. I want to just give you some information that a lot of the content from what we're going to be considering today is from a book called Extraordinary Relationships. It's by Roberta Gilbert. And you can have a look into that if this information is interesting to you. So let's just jump into overfunctioning. This is a pattern that shows up when we're taking more responsibility than belongs to us, right? The goal is that we're not in overfunctioning, not in underfunctioning, but all of us end up in one position or the other over our lives. And so we'll consider how this overfunctioning looks when it shows up. So it may be something like having goals for other people that they don't even have for their own selves. You may be experiencing periodic, sudden kind of burnouts, like, that's enough, I quit, I give in, would happen if you were in that over-functioning position for too long. You may find yourself in the position of giving advice, especially unsolicited advice. That may be a reflection of being in this position, as well as doing things for others that they could easily do for themselves. Some more items here would be worrying about kind of ruminating about their problems, being quite concerned about the struggles that are clearly on their side of the fence, not yours. Feeling responsible for other people, feeling like their emotions, their experiences, their challenges, their struggles belong to you. Having the sense that you know what's best for them. Sensing that they don't know what's best for them, but that you are the one who has the best sense of that. As well as talking more than listening. If you find that the pie chart of how much space and time and words are being taken up between you and your partner is really disproportionate in your direction, 80-20, talking more than listening, you may consider that in that area you might have found yourself in the overfunctioning position. Let's think of the counterpart to that and look at what it means to be in the underfunctioning position. You may notice for your own self that you're kind of floating about without many goals for your own self. Or when you do have goals, you find that you don't end up following through with them often. You may notice that you are asking for advice when it's not needed, or getting others to help when really what's needed is for you to figure out on your own independent and autonomous way how it is to navigate that challenge. Some other items that you may notice if you're in that underfunctioning position is that you may see a pattern of acting irresponsibly. A note to pay attention to is that what we're looking for are patterns. So ways in which behaviors kind of over a period of time seem to be looking familiar or patterned. So acting irresponsibly. You may find yourself as the counterpart to that overfunctioning, you may find yourself listening more than you are talking. And that you're kind of in the position of being quiet and keeping your own thoughts to yourself, maybe not thinking that you have much to say, maybe thinking that the other person would be critical or judgmental of what you have to say, so you find yourself taking up less space than maybe belongs to you. In a patterned way, becoming mentally or physically ill often, really struggling with down periods, finding times when your functioning is below what you're capable of because of a mental or physical illness. And maybe noticing of a pattern towards addictive behavior, whether that's substance or video games or workaholism, that you find yourself in patterns of addiction often. So we can look at these overfunctioning and underfunctioning patterns as kind of broad scope, what it is to end up in that pattern. But what I want to talk to you about is the idea that we have perceptions of the overfunctioning and underfunctioning postures, and sometimes those perceptions are inaccurate. I want to clarify here what are some of the myths, as well as what is probably really true about this reciprocal pattern of overfunctioning and underfunctioning. One myth that you'll often notice is that the perception of the overfunctioner is that they're the healthier one. I want to clarify that it's important to consider that both people are just as stuck. The outward appearance of it may look like a certain thing, but no one is healthier in the overfunctioning and underfunctioning pattern. Both people are just as stuck. Another myth is that you are either purely an overfunctioner or purely an underfunctioner. That doesn't tend to be true. Most people experience time in both of these roles depending on what the topic is. So when it comes to car repair, you overfunction. When it comes to academics for your kiddos, you underfunction. When it comes to cleanliness of the house, you overfunction. When it comes to time with the in-laws, you underfunction, right? So based on the content, you may flip-flop roles. Most people spend time in both of the roles, which is really important to consider. So you want to consider that yes, both of you are just as stuck and both of you are borrowing. There's this idea that we each have a certain amount of space and a certain amount of self inside of us. And so that is our values, our identity, our goals, what have you, that make up our self. When we're in the overfunctioning, underfunctioning, reciprocal relationship pattern, both the overfunctioner and the underfunctioner are borrowing self. We're kind of getting identity from being the helper. We're getting identity from being the one being helped. We are getting identity from managing someone else's problems. We are getting identity from being the one that needs our problems managed, being the sick one, perhaps. And so it's important to know that both people are stuck as well as both people are borrowing. The process to manage is this borrowing of self that's happening between the two partners. And we'll talk about what it is that needs to happen to kind of stop that flip-flop of borrowing of self going between the two partners. Let's consider what is the way out of this. So in general, I'm going to talk to both the overfunctioner and underfunctioner specifically, but in general, what's important is that each partner begins to take responsibility only for what is in their lane, only for what is in their yard, communicating only for self, which is why this word we is so troublesome. That I'm not speaking on your behalf, that I'm speaking only on my behalf, recognizing that you're different from me and that you may have changed or grown in ways that I'm not privy to. And so I certainly cannot speak on your behalf in any certain moment or on any certain topic. Something that's also really important is to define your own self. Clarify who you are, what your values are, what makes you tick, and what's important to you, and clarify and define that to your partner. Also, asking your own self, in every situation, what is it that I contribute to this pattern continuing to roll on and continuing to show up in my relationship? So let me speak really quickly to the overfunctioner. Here are some important items for you. Take responsibility only for your own self. When you find yourself being identified, when you find that your identity is being kind of built up and held up, propped up by your help to others, you are going to be more prone to end up in that overfunctioning position. When you are committed to only taking responsibility for yourself, you can prevent some of that sliding over into their lane. You can be less concerned with the management of others because you begin to believe that they are more capable than what you've seen in the past. You sometimes have to believe that first, which makes room for the underfunctioner to start to increase their functioning, and committing to not doing things for others that they could easily do for their own self. Really important. To the underfunctioner, I want to start off and just say that your thoughts and your feelings are in your lane. They are your responsibility and they belong to you, which means that you will commit to not asking for help when it's truly not needed. The goal here is not that you end up more isolated or less resourced, but that you are clearer for your own self about what it is that you're capable of. When you ask for help when it's not needed, you actually undercut your own self, making yourself feel less competent and less capable, which then in turn, in the long run, does really make you less competent and less capable. And so the commitment to not asking for help when it's not needed is really helpful in that. And coming to the position of believing that both your own happiness and your own challenge belongs squarely to you to manage, and squarely to you to either fuel your own happiness as well as manage your own challenges. I want you to know ahead of time to expect sabotage. If you think that this process is going to be kind of one steady line straight up, then you'll feel so frustrated and so disappointed when you make a stride in the direction of not managing your partner's finances, or a stride in the direction of becoming competent in an area that you used to struggle in. You may feel so frustrated when your partner actually protests it or sabotages it. Know that it's normal because the system, the relationship system, the family system that you find yourself in will always prefer status quo. It always works to shift back to equilibrium, which is not the best for growth, but it's just what a system does. It's what systems in nature do, is they shift towards equilibrium. Know that that is not because growth is not a good thing. Know that you can push through using some stamina in order to get to the other side of those bumps that will come. This stamina that's required comes from the perspective that incremental growth produces longer term outcomes. When we see quick shifts, those don't tend to stick as far as behavior goes, but when we are reflecting more on small incremental items in the direction of progress, that tends to stick longer. Don't consider the short-term process to know whether or not you're headed where you want to go. Know that what we have to tend to look at is we have to zoom out and look at the overall long term, because we'll have resistance, because there will be sabotage, because protest is normal. We have to zoom out and look at the overall long term. In this idea that sabotage is normal and stamina is required, we'll know that we're going to need more maturity, as well as knowing that what will be produced tends to be higher overall levels of differentiation. Differentiation's that word talking about this concept of this balance between autonomy and clarity of self, as well as connected togetherness. The balance of both of those is what differentiation is clarifying or defining. Okay, guys, so we have come to the end of discussing this overfunctioning and underfunctioning. and I will see you in the next video.